All right, question. How do you get better at anything? It's not a trick question. Some of you are into sports. I got back into golf a little bit ago, and it's fair to say that a few years back when I was golfing, I was one of the guys that whenever you go to the driving range would take out your driver, and I see them out there all the time, and they just beat the snot out of their driver. I mean, they're just out there practicing their drives, and you know, a lot of them still need to practice their drives, right? That's what I'm saying, okay? Now, when you do a little bit of like peeling beneath the layers, one of the things you find out is on a good day, you might use your driver 14 times, period. That means there's 4 par 3s. Unless you're like me, I don't typically take my driver out on a par 3. So you're using your driver 14 times a day. But this thing, the putter, you will use on average, they say, an average golfer will use this 36 times around. As many as 36 to 40, depends on how bad you are with this, is how often you use it, okay? And so the prevailing wisdom or thought is this, that a lot of guys are spending time using a club they don't use that much, and this thing they spend very little time practicing with. So when I got back into the game, one of the things I changed in my routine is when I practice, I'll hit maybe 10 to 12 shots with my driver, but I'll spend upwards of 30 minutes just putting the golf ball. If you, not that you pay any attention, but if you did pay attention, Scotty Scheffler made the cut. He's made like, I don't know, you got to go back 4 years since he missed a cut. But on Friday, he had to make a 7-foot putt. He had to make a 7-foot putt to keep that, I believe it's a 4-year streak alive of playing on Fridays, on Saturdays and Sundays because of the putter. He's gotten really, really good on his putter. Now, what have I done differently? Since I've gotten back into this, I've had 4 lessons with a guy who actually knows golf, all right? I've 4 45-minute sessions, 2 of them on putting. 2 times specifically, we've just gone over here to the falls on the putting range over there. He's met me over there and worked with me for a half hour on putting. I practice when I'm like going, like doing what I want to do. I'll practice an hour, maybe not a week, maybe it's about every other week. And if I practice for an hour, 30 minutes of it is spent with just a putter, just trying to get better at putting. Because if I want to lower my score, this is the trick to it, getting better with this club, not the driver. So I'm talking to people. I bet I've read upwards of 10 books on golf in the last 2 years. Just reading what people think about it. There's like guys from yesteryear that are fun to read, and then some of the current things, some of the current guys. Because there's a mindset out there, like how do you play the course? Like there's a lot of guys who get themselves in the trees, and then they think, I'm just going to whack myself out of the trees, and you end up in worse shape, right? So there's just how do you think your way around? Well, I wouldn't know that. It doesn't come naturally. I've just read some people what they think about it. Let me ask you something. What is it you want to get better at? What is it that you'd like to improve on? And what are you going to do? What steps can you take to be better? And here's the interesting thing. When it comes to things of the faith, things of God, what can we do that would make us better? And I've done church enough to think most of us, no criticism, I just have observed most of us think if I show up for an hour a couple times a month on a Sunday, that my faith will get better. And then you get, I mean this, people get frustrated because you're like, I just don't see any improvement. Like I don't see that I'm any different. And I want to this morning look at, I think Jesus gave us some instructions on how we can actually grow with this thing called faith. I just don't know that we think that I kid you not. When I go out to the driving range and I see people just whacking away with the driver, and I see very few really working on just a simple 3-foot putt, making it go straight, like you're missing something. And I think it's like, oh, this seems like no big deal. Anybody can putt, but man, I got to be able to crank the ball out there. And you fail to realize that if you miss a 3-foot putt, counts the same as if you hit a drive 220 yards. Still one stroke, right? So what did Jesus have to say? Because he never golfed, right? But he did talk about this thing of life in the kingdom and how we can be better at it. All right, here's what I want you to understand. God intends for us to have a simple faith, and he's not looking for how we can impress him, but rather that we would sit with him. If you follow golf, and just I know I'm boring you if you don't follow golf, but golfers, people who watch golf, are impressed with a 350-yard drive. The guys that can really bang it out there. They got charts, they show all this stuff. They're like, whoa, trajectory, all this stuff. And it's like, that's really, really cool. And they don't like, when a guy's making like a 5-foot putt, they're not like showing all the various angles or whatever. We get impressed with big. We go wow with stuff that's like really, somebody sent me a note last night, hit my inbox at 10 o'clock. Just saying, hey, Mike, I just want you to know, thinking of you, I'm praying for you. That was the gist of it. I boiled it down for you. Well, I mean, and you could say, well, it's not that big a deal. No, it was a big deal to me last night at 10 o'clock. It really was. Okay? We look for these impressive things that maybe we can do for God, and we miss the opportunities we have to do simple things. Because I think God's interested in simple things, right? And so Jesus talked about, he's come, he's preaching this message of good news in the kingdom. He's talked about what kingdom people look like, that they're broken in spirit. They mourn over sin, over brokenness they see. They're people that mercy is part of their DNA. They are people that look to bring people together rather than see them divided, and it actually hurts their heart when they see division. They are people, as it says here, he talked about hungering and thirsting for righteousness. They want the right thing to be done in people, in their families, in their own life, and that's what drives them. They stand up for righteousness, and when you stand up for righteousness, some people are not going to like it, okay? And then he went on, he moved from there, and he said, okay, these people in the kingdom who are blessed, who are, I would say, favored, they have a sense of God's favor on them, these blessed people live differently. And they're influencers, just like salt. You don't need a lot of salt to make a difference. And salt was designed to preserve things. I think you and I, as we're out in culture and we're living a life that's trying to please Jesus, we can be an influence for good. He said, let your good deeds, as you're out there living life, man, do good so that you can point people to God. Not to point people, you're not putting a spotlight on yourself. You're just trying to let people know that as you're out there and you're trying to not be a goody two-shoes, but rather be a person that's like, I want the right thing to be done. What's the right thing for me to do here? What's the right words here? What's my attitude like here? All those things are like, where do they come from? Because many of us, if left to our own devices, want our own way, and we'll be selfish, and we'll say something sarcastic or biting, because that's what comes out of us naturally. And Jesus said, man, don't do that. You're my follower, so therefore live differently, he said. And in this way, your light's going to shine, and people are going to see your good deeds, and they're going to give praise to God. And then last week we just saw that I think one of the premier ways that you can put on, look like, demonstrate a Christ follower is not when you love your friends. Because Jesus said anybody can do that. It takes nothing at all to love your tribe. It's no big deal. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. That it's love for your critic, It's love for Jesus used the word enemies. I don't know if you have an enemy, but I bet you a lot of you got people you don't like. You got people you disagree with. You got people that you don't see the world the same with. And how do you want the best for those people? It's no big deal to love people like you. You don't get credit for that. Don't pat yourself on the back. Don't think you're just this great big deal. You're not. Show me the person that wants the best for someone they don't get along with. It does loving deeds for someone that doesn't speak well of them. Show me that person, and Jesus would say, you're getting it. You've heard it said, you should love your friends and hate your enemies. But I say to you, in my kingdom, love your enemies. Do good for those who hate you. Pray for those who persecute you. Give without expecting anything in return. And if you do those things, then you will be like your Father in heaven. And man, what if the church could get a hold of that message? I really want you to grasp that. What would it be like for you to speak well of your critic? You don't have to run them down. I think it was Lincoln who one time was, he nominated a guy, I think the guy's name was Stewell, S-T-E-W-A-L. And this gentleman had been a critic, a thorn in Lincoln's side, bashing him in the press, whatever you can think of. He was just like not a Lincoln fan, right? And Lincoln nominates the dude to a cabinet position. He was asked, why are you doing this? Don't you know he's not like one of your biggest supporters? And Lincoln, if I remember the story, Lincoln stopped the person asking the question and says, excuse me just a moment. He said, I thought you asked me what I thought of him, not what he thought of me. I want you to let that, see, if you want to ask me what my critics think of me, I can answer that. I have a pretty good idea. I know the people who don't like me. I know what they're saying. I get it. Okay? But that doesn't need to influence, hear me, that doesn't need to influence what I say out loud about them. It can. You can bash them back because they bash you all day long. You can do it. And culture would say you're justified in doing it. Like, who's going to judge you for it? Like, I get it. But when you speak well of the person who doesn't like you, when you refuse to badmouth them in public, like, you need a safe place to vent. I get it. I've got a couple people I can vent to, all right? But by and large, that's like, I know when I'm venting. Do you know when you're venting? You know, like when you're like, I'm just telling you, I'll say it. I'm going to vent. I'm just going to spew for a little bit. I know it's my heart. I just got to get that gunk out, right, in a safe place. So that by and large, when I'm out, like, I really can, like, okay, I get it, but I see the good. So Jesus said, that's what kingdom people do differently. Okay, so now in chapter 6, he's going to talk about what's it like to have this simple faith. You may be familiar with the passage. Chapter 6, verse 1, be careful not to do your acts of righteousness before men to be seen by them. If you do, you're going to have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, don't announce it with trumpets as the hypocrites do. And don't look to be honored by men. That's what they do. I tell you the truth, they have received the reward in full. When you give to the needy, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be done in secret. And your Father who sees what's done in secret will reward you. It said in verse 5, when you pray, don't be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues on the street corners to be seen. And I'm going to tell you the truth, they've received their reward in full. When you pray, go into your room, close the door, pray to your Father who's unseen. And your Father who sees what's done in secret, he's going to reward you. When you pray, don't keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they're going to be heard because of their many words. Don't be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. And then he gives us the disciples' prayer. Finally, he says in verse 16, and when you fast, don't look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show men they're fasting. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full. When you fast, put oil on your head, wash your face, so that you will not be obvious to men that you're fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. All right, I want to unpack a little bit of this real quick here. First thing Jesus says is watch out. It really means be careful. It means like, man, this is serious. Take note of this. Take note of what? He said, I don't want you to be like the hypocrites. Who are the hypocrites? Hypocrites are, the word actually means like actors. Like it's somebody who's playing a role. I have an interesting question for you. How many of you watched the movie Tombstone? How many of you seen it? Almost everybody has, right? Okay, you've seen the movie Tombstone. How many people died in the movie Tombstone? How many people died in the movie Tombstone? Isn't that a trick question? How many of you got 10 or more? 20 or more? Man, would it surprise you no one died in the movie Tombstone? Why are you looking at me confused? Did you people watch the movie? No one died in the movie Tombstone. All those actors are in other roles. There were no services held for Kurt Russell and that whole gang, Val Kilmer, all those guys. They all acted again. None of them died. It was a movie. They were acting. It was fake. Right? If you think anybody died, come talk to me because I got land I want to sell you. I'm being serious. I believe you'll buy it based on your response. No one died. The word hypocrite is an actor. He's someone who fakes it. Someone where it's not real. And Jesus says the worst thing that can happen to your soul is you play act your faith. It's not real with you. It's not like it's just something you do. I was reading somebody this week who's a 6th grade teacher in a Christian school. She surveyed her students, and the question was, she just had them get out a piece of paper, and she said, tell me how you know God is real. And she had them answer. And she said, out of like 30 kids, like one could answer that. Like they said, well, God is real because he's real in my heart. Because the Bible tells me so. Like they couldn't answer like to someone who honestly wants to know how is God real. They had no answer. And I think the person, it was just like, man, we've raised a generation. No wonder, and the stats bear it out, when kids leave the church and they go off to college, they abandon the faith because they've not been taught how to think the faith through. And so they get in a university setting and people question their faith and they're like, I don't know. That makes sense. Because we've not taught them how to think things through. We have given them actions without helping them understand the whys behind the actions. We've set them up for what I think is a shot at failure because they don't know how to talk to people about things that they say they hold dear. Jesus, way back here, says, watch out that you're not doing the right actions and you don't know why. He says, the people that we need to be mindful of are people who they look good in public. Okay? So he talks about the hypocrites and man, hear me. The crowd that day would have had a bunch of people in it. Regular, everyday people, but it also would have had the Pharisees, the religious elites, those who were you would look at and go, those people are close to God. He just names names. He said, don't be like them because they get their reward in full. What's their reward? They just want to be seen. They want to be thought well of. And I really this week was struggling with I don't know many people that would today go through ritualistic religious things so that people would think well of them. But I want to unpack this a little bit to see if maybe there's a hint of any of that with us. So Jesus said, here's 3 practices these are habits. These are things you and I can do. But what I want this morning is to show you the why behind it. Because I think they're like, for me, putting. I got to keep practicing in order to be better. It's not going to come naturally. And so Jesus talked about, how do we give without wanting people's applause? How do we pray without pretending like we're somebody we're not? And how do we fast without wanting to drawing attention to ourselves? So Jesus said first, he said, hey, when you give, like, give in secret. When you give, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. When you give when you just try and support what God is doing, do it without a whole lot of wanting to draw attention to yourself. I don't think that happens much. I struggled with that. The closest I got to that I've always found interesting, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but you can see when I give you this illustration how it makes sense. Somebody gives a couple $1 million to a university, what do we do?
Put it on a plaque.
Put their name on it. Name the building, name the wing. Maybe they get a hall, right? And why do we do that? Why do we do that? Why can't they just give and something good happens without putting their name to it? Why do you think it's important for some people to have their name attached to it? I mean, you're going to do the act, right? You're going to do a good thing because you want education to go forward. You want to see this happen at your school, whatever. And now we put I've only come, I can't even name on one hand churches where but I have seen it once where they had names of people who they put their name on that chair. And I'm just Mike. That's really? This is your own personal chair? We put your name on it for you, so we saved your seat? This is why couldn't you just give? Because that's out of the goodness of your heart. Last quarter, over half of the people who attend Stonebridge gave a gift more than once, and I want to say thank you. Over half. People are wondering, hey, is the church going to survive? Hey, how are we doing? I know there's some scuttle out there. Hey, you look at the numbers don't look good. Over half of the people coming to Stonebridge gave more than one gift, and last October, November, December, the last quarter, we were $5,000 in the black. So for all the gunk that we've experienced, God sustained us through the last quarter. I don't know what that means for this quarter, but I do know that God has showed himself faithful through your gifts. And if you want, I can name your names. But see, wouldn't that be weird? Because you didn't do it for that, did you? You did it because your heart wants to see the gospel go forward, and you want to see God's truth, and you want to see lives changed, and it's happening still. And that's why you give. And Jesus said, that should be your motivation. What's driving your gift? What's your motive behind you wanting to see good things happen? Jesus says that's what's important because that's what he sees in your heart. He then said, hey, we should pray without pretending. So when you pray, he said, go into a secret spot. And don't pretend like you've got the closest I've got, if anybody prays like this, please hear me. What I'm really wanting to do is instruct. I'm not trying to bash. The closest I get to this repeating words that I've heard in churches is people who are like, oh, dear God, would you please do this? And dear God, would you please and dear God, we need, and dear God. And I'm like, at some point, did he forget you were talking to him? If I talked to you and every sentence I had to say your name to remind you that I'm talking to you, wouldn't that feel a bit awkward? But I've seen that in churches. And I'm like, he's listening. All you got to do is say, Mike, and you got my attention and we can talk. You don't have to every other sentence say, hey, Mike. And Mike, did you know? And Mike, did you? And I'm like, whoa, I got you. Jesus would say, when you pray, Go in secret, pray to your Father who's listening, and be real. Just talk. I've encountered people in my past. I don't know if you have. Have you ever encountered somebody in your past that when they pray, they use another language? It's like really weird. For me, growing up, it was people who would we could have a normal conversation and then they'd pray in King James. And I'm like, you get it, right? Jason's cracking up because we just shifted gears here. And I'm like, I never could understand that. Does God only hear in King James? That's really what I wonder. And I mean no disrespect because I love those people, right? But I just can't understand that. God hears certain language, but I feel bad. The thing that as a pastor crushes my heart is if you feel like you can't pray out loud because you're going to do it wrong. That does make me feel sad. Like you're going to do it wrong. Like God's going to say, you really screwed that one up. You really think that's what the Father does? He sits there and judges your prayers? I heard about a little girl that was so broken up over what was going in her life that she just started praying the alphabet. She just was, it's like 6 or 7, and she's literally with tears, and she doesn't know what to pray for, how to pray. And so an adult, a teacher trying to be helpful, came along beside her and said to her, honey, what are you doing? It sounds like you're just praying the alphabet. And she said, I am. She said, because someone told me that when I don't know what to pray, God hears and will make sense of it. I'm just praying the letters. He'll put the words together. Man, Jesus would say, when you pray, he's assuming you're going to pray. You're not praying. So is it wrong when we pray out in public here? No. There's a place for praying in public prayers to lead us together in prayer before the Father. But if you're one of those folks that's you're doing it wrong, the only way you're doing it wrong is if you want to be seen and thought oh, look at me, because he hears your heart. He knows what's on your heart. And there are times when my prayers are really, God, I will say, Father, I just don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. Would you hear my heart? And I think the Father hears those prayers. I don't know what to ask you for. I believe this hurts you as much as it hurts me. And if we could have that sense that the Father who sees in secret will reward us. I'm going to touch on in just a moment what I think the reward is, because that's an interesting thing. 3 times here he says, God who sees in secret will reward us. But I want you to you can't pray wrong unless you're doing it so you're seen. The third thing that Jesus said, the third practice, is to fast without fanfare. We tend to fast here. The Jews were master fasters. They did it a couple times a week. Fasting means to go without food. They would call attention to themselves. It was obvious, oh, look what you're doing. You are, they just would. And again, I thought, I don't know that we do that much, except, no disrespect. If you're watching online, if you're here, I mean this in no disrespectful way. But Ash Wednesday is about the closest I think we get to it. On a basketball court on Wednesday, one of my guys on my crew comes in and he's got ash on his forehead. And there was 2 players on the court for both teams that had ash on Wednesday. And I'm like, I get what Ash Wednesday is about. It's the beginning of Lent. Lent's a 40-day period where we should be preparing our hearts for Easter. Okay? We're thinking about, how do I get closer? How can I grow in my faith in anticipation of Easter Sunday when we celebrate Jesus coming for us? So I understand it, but it just is I don't know many people that are man, I look like I just rolled out of bed in the morning, and but I'm really devoted and serious with my faith to God, right? Our society fasts to lose weight. Largely, that's why we fast. It's not for religious purposes. It's because you're using it as a way to be healthier in your mind, okay? But the Jews fasted to mourn, to plead for forgiveness or plead for God's help. When you look at the scriptures, there's a lot of different kinds of fasts in there, right? It says here that it was always tied to prayer with the mindset of how can I possibly eat something when I feel this way about. People say, Christians say, you shouldn't participate in Lent. God never said to do Lent. He never said you can't. Giving should happen all the time. Praying should happen all the time. Fasting should happen all the time. I've never been one. I just abstaining from food. I like to eat. Just being honest, I like to eat. Okay? But what if fasting, so I do believe that in the scriptures, fasting is abstaining from eating. Why? Why do people give up red meat for Lent? You know what the big things are? What are the big things in your mind that you've heard that people give up for Lent?
Chocolate.
They fast from?
Chocolate.
What?
Chocolate.
Chocolate. Chocolate would be a big sin that I could see. Right? I need to let go of chocolate because it's really causing me to stumble. Okay? But sweets, candy, chocolate. What else do people let go of?
Soda.
Say what?
Alcohol.
Alcohol is a big one that you'll see out there, right? What else? What?
Ice cream.
Ice cream. That would be sweets and stuff. Didn't make the top 10 list, but if that's your, coffee was a big one. Social media was a big one. Red meat was a big one. Friday fish fries. Why are there Friday fish fries? Because people are abstaining from meat, red meat, on Fridays, and you're going to eat fish. Why? Why? And here's what maybe it's happening, I just don't see it talked about much. I don't hear it much. Why would I give up chocolate? And by the way, I haven't. I got a bag of M&Ms in my office. I'll share. I kid you not. I just haven't, right? Why would you give it up? And what I find is happening in the church with most people, and if you have conversations, one of the things that you might ask is, if someone's giving something up, you could say to them, what are you taking on? Like you're giving this up. Why? Because in the Bible, the purpose of the fast was so that you could take on more of God. You're letting something go so that you can use that time, use that energy to hunger or thirst for more of God. And did Jesus say that? Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be the ones filled. I'm all for letting go of something. Just use that time when you're tempted to okay, I'm tempted to eat a cheeseburger now. God, man, thank you for food. I really appreciate that I've got an appetite. Father, would you help me have an appetite for that which is right? Because I find myself sometimes drifting and being ambivalent to the hurts of the world. Just a simple prayer like that, to use that abstaining to force your mind to go back to, God, how do I have more of you? I want more of you. How do I get that? I'm letting this go so that I might take this on. Jesus said, when you fast, man, don't let anybody know. Don't make a big deal of it. Because the only one who needs to know is your Father who sees in secret. And the Father who sees in secret will reward you. So I asked myself, what's the reward? If I'm better at golf, what's my reward? I'm serious. If you're an athlete, we've got some baseball players in here. If you get better at baseball, what's your reward? Largely it's what? Recognition, applause, Like, oh, like Warman beat us, which never happens. Ryan's back there. He'll testify. It never happens. My goal is to beat Ryan. And I'm like, I got still a long ways to go to beat Ryan, right? But still I practice. Why? Well, one of the reasons is so I can beat Danny Coonan. That is true. I'm not, no. God is my witness. I want to beat my son and my son-in-laws. That's what I want to do. That's why I practice. That's why I want to be better. I want a reward. If you're going to put yourself out and grow in your faith, what's your reward? Why would you do it? Why would you spend time praying? Why would you be generous? Why would you set aside times where you give something up in order that you might take on more of God? What would your reward be? That's the question you need to answer. Because until you can answer it, you're going to have a hard time doing the others. They just won't make sense to you. Why would you be generous to other people? I mean, you need your money, right? Why would you let it go? If you let it go, how's it going to get backfilled? Right? Those are honest questions. Why would you let it go? Why would you pray if you don't think God hears? Why would you pray if you don't think God cares? Why would you pray if you think God's not really interested, he's not going to do anything, not going to change anything, right? Why pray? Why give something up that you enjoy if you're not sure that you're going to get more of God back? Doesn't it seem odd? So I can totally get the frustration. What if the reward was this? Just want you to think about it. What if the reward in doing these things is so that there would be, I got a quote here from an author, but my words are, what if the reward was Jesus with a sense of he's more real in your world, and you really are seeing God work in your life, and you really do see prayers answered? But to get there, you have to believe there's a God who sees in secret. Man, are you sure? I'm trying to be honest with you. I don't know. Does God see in secret and reward? Does God see your faithfulness? Does God see your generosity? Does God see your heart? The mercy? You're attempting to stand for what's right? Does he see that? If he sees that, Robert Mulholland is an author, pastor, who says, union with God results in our being a person through whom God's presence touches the world with forgiveness, cleansing, healing, and transforming grace. The world will not believe in a Christ because of our sound theology, our correct creed, or our well-defined dogma. The world will believe when it sees Christ-likeness manifested in our lives. When Jesus is real to you. When your faith is real to you. When you respond to the critic with grace instead of karma. When you're attacked, you don't attack back. When you are persecuted, you don't lash back. When you're asked about your faith, you actually have a credible answer for someone to think about. That's what I think the world is hungering for. That's what we have to offer. That's simple faith. Ryan's coming back up. In the Old Testament, the people were in a quandary. If you look at the Old Testament prophet Micah, the people were struggling And they're like, God, what do you want from us? God, why is this so hard? What do you want from us? And some of you know the Old Testament verse, Micah 6:8. God answered them. He said, okay, you want to know what I want? Let me just make it really simple for you. But he has shown you, oh man, what is good, what is acceptable, what God wants from you. To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. You do that, you're going to nail it. To do justice, to love mercy, and to walk in humility with your God. That's going to be radically different from what we see out there every day. Let's stand and sing with you. Father, when we leave this place, my prayer is that this would be our heart's cry. That we're out here Monday through Saturday wanting more of your presence, sensing more of your beauty. Finding, Father, that you're gracious to meet us where we are. That you know what's going on in our hearts and you just want us to be real before you. Father, I pray that as we just have conversations with people, that we would listen to what's on hearts. We can't, pretend to be able to be a healer, to know all. But I know that you do. I know that you are. And so may we be able to point people to you, Lord Jesus. May we be kingdom-minded people. May we seek first your kingdom, your righteousness, and trust then that you have our back. We ask in Jesus that you would be honored in our church, in our lives, in this community. In your name we pray. Amen. God bless you as you go. Have a good week. We'll see you again soon. Take care.